Hot stove season is here, and there's a big question on the horizon for D-backs fans. Is MVP candidate Ketel Marte being traded? We're discussing all the possible destinations and returns right here, right now on the T-Backs podcast.
Baseball is back. Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send them all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
It's Alec Thomas from the Diamondbacks.
Former Major League Baseball player Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Torey Lavello, and you're listening to the T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
T-Backs Podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the T-Backs podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. We are proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast, and we've got colossal breaking news to talk about. You'd think I might need something a little bit stronger to talk about what we're about to go over, but no, I have indeed just gone with my usual cup of tea for this one. But the tea itself is piping hot, unless you've been living under a rock in the desert, which, to be fair for D-backs fans, is more likely than other teams' fans. You will have seen the firestorm of discussion that erupted yesterday as USA Today's Bob Nightingale broke the story that the D-backs were exploring a trade for arguably the face of the franchise, multiple All-Star and MVP candidate second baseman Ketel Marte. While MLB.com's Steve Gilbert and AZ Central's Nick Piacoro called the potential moves either unlikely or fat out refuted the rumour, John Gambadoro came in swinging, saying that while the D-backs weren't actively shopping Ketel around, they were fielding calls about him. Now, this isn't much of a news factor by itself. Teams are always calling up other teams saying, hey, what about this guy? What about this guy? No, I don't want to trade him. I don't want to send him to you. Oh, you can do one, whatever. That happens, and most people who've seen Moneyball and know anything about baseball know teams are always calling other teams about all players at all given times. But given the stories about unrest in the clubhouse earlier in the year before the trade deadline, and this was unrest that was surrounded and apparently caused by Marte and his special treatment and unique number of off days and rest time outside of his stints on the IL, then many have been quick to put together the pieces and call it a done deal already. We're going to address that. We're going to see what people are saying is happening, what people are saying is possible to happen. Now, we are, of course, a long way from the point of that being a done deal, but as Alex D'Agostino has pointed out, that doesn't mean that the D-backs aren't setting up a plan to trade Marte internally as we speak. Winter meetings are coming up, and with wealths of talent always available, especially with a crop of unique power-hitting infielders being posted from Japan and the NPB this year, which includes Munetaka Murakami, who we've talked about before, and their less discussed but perhaps more valuable bang-for-your-buck counterpart in Kazuma Okamoto from the Yomiuri Giants, perhaps the plan to move Marte could be further along than we think. This then brings up two critical questions. The first is, how do you replace a player who put up 4.4 WAR, 28 home runs and 72 RBI on their way to a career third All-Star game and second Silver Slugger? Many D-backs fans would point towards Geraldo Perdomo, Jordan Lawler, Blaze Alexander or Tim Tower, who are all theoretically capable of playing in the four-hole. And further down the crop, prospects such as Tommy Troy, Demetrio Cristantes, the James Groover or Jansel Luis, with Troy especially having half a season of AAA ball under his belt where he hit for a .295 batting average. He's potentially a candidate to step up from inside the organisation. However, we have seen from the 5th of November news cycle that Mike Hazen is also looking to deal a lot of top prospects in exchange for that quality pitching depth the D-backs need so badly, with the likes of Groover, Cristantes and Troy all potentially on the block. So only someone like Ryan Waldschmidt is thought to be completely off the table. So in that case, betting on Marte's replacement coming from in-house is unlikely, although not impossible. One guy, which Ildemaro Vargas, was Ketel Marte's replacement, signed out of free agency, and he has elected to test the waters of free agency again this off-season. And while the 8-year Major League isn't the same elite caliber as Marte, he is still a solid option, posting a positive WAR with a .270 average and 19 homers in 38 games, nothing to sniff at either. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see Vargas in the conversation for a return, especially if the Snakes judge Jordan Lawler to be a better option, either at third or at shortstop, or potentially even in the outfield. And yeah, I'd be happy to see Vargas come back, although at age 34 he might only be a short-term solution until somebody like Tommy Troy is a little less green. If we're talking about Vargas, then of course you have to consider the rest of the free agent class. One name that sticks out is Jorge Polanco, who romped their way to a 2.6 WAR with a 265 average and 26 home runs in 2025 as the Mariners went all the way to the ALCS with him rotating between second, short, and DH. While, again, caliber like Marte's would be hard to replace, you wouldn't bet against Polanco to make a positive impact. Monetarily, he's likely to cost a good amount less than Marte's $100 million extension will in the next few years, and with a couple of less worrying injuries in his career than Marte, who at times has been fragile at best in recent years, Polanco definitely fits with Ken Kendrick's requirement of a lower payroll for 2026. Now, before we get into what you're all here for, which is of course the big blockbuster trade rumors, I'd like to highlight one more name out of free agency, and that is Gleyber Torres. He's a compatriot of Marte's from last year's All-Star roster, so you can't complain about a lack of that particular metric, and he did have a strong year at the plate, putting 2.9 WAR, a 256 average, and 16 home runs up, but crucially ranked in the 100th percentile in chase rate and 95th percentile in walk rate, placing in the top 20% in both whiff and strikeout percentage. Yes, his defense was an issue, but in a D-backs team that rotates players in the DH often, and with Torrey's propensity for random rest days, platooning Torres at second while Lawler gets reps there as well as at short and third could also be an option. Now, however you replace Ketel, one thing is a given, and that is that the Snakes will be looking for big value in return if we were to trade him. One thing that's been made very clear from all sources in the loop is we are looking for young, strong, and controllable starting pitching in return. Now, I think with Marte getting a little past his prime and a less than attractive injury record, that a blockbuster trade for a Cy Young arm like Paul Skeens or Tariq Skubal will be dead in the water from the get-go. Sorry for the clickbait thumbnail featuring those two, but that's just how it is. However, one name that was already mentioned in these conversations is Hunter Greene from the Cincinnati Reds. In 2025, he went 7-4 with a 4.4 WAR, a 2.76 ERA, and was building off of his first All-Star appearance in 2024, where he was also 8th in Cy Young voting. He's known to be on a team-friendly deal and is under team control until 2029, all factors that the D-backs are known to be looking for. It is a projected blockbuster of a trade, and it seems to meet both teams' demands. Now, Greene hasn't been lights out in his history at Chase Field in the past, with his desert debut ending catastrophically in 2023, as he threw only 3.2 innings to an ERA over 12, although he did earn the win more recently in May of 2024, where he threw 7 innings for the win. While it's a small sample size of a variable statistic, it doesn't fill me with gut confidence, although who knows what kind of effect being based much closer to home could have for the California native. And even then, I would still argue that a return for 2 above-average pitchers, such as, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, for example, would be almost as valuable as getting only the one arm, even if that is a top 5% arm. Now, no matter what, the D-backs will be looking for a minimum of a front-end starter and likely a late reliever on top of that. And with the Reds' closer being veteran Emilio Pagan, I see it unlikely the D-backs will spring in that direction solely because the fall-off we saw with Paul Sewald was that astronomically bad. And that's not a risk I'd like to see, it's not a risk I see our front office making. We've been linked with free agents such as Luke Weaver, and that's a much safer bet when it comes to late inning relief, so unless the Reds throw in a serious couple of pen arms and that really they don't have too many of those to choose from, then a deal for Hunter Greene plus extras might be in jeopardy. Moving on, another team unashamedly looking for bats is the Texas Rangers. And while Marcus Semien is their main man for second base, Ketel has been talked about as a potential full-time DH candidate both for the D-backs and others, and he hit a heck of a lot better last year than the Rangers' current DH, who is of course former Diamondback Jock Peterson, who they drastically overpaid for at the start of the year. The Rangers also have some attracting-looking starting pitchers that I believe the D-backs should be all over. The one that really catches my eye is Jack Leiter, whose 10-10 record with a 3.86 ERA last year isn't crazy kind of numbers, but he's got good stuff, and with many people saying his control issues are solely down to the pitching environment being quite toxic in the Lone Star State, he represents a solid option who can absolutely be developed through several years of team control. Similarly, a teammate of his since college, Kumar Rocker, also at the Texas Rangers, for me would be a good addition to be part of that package. He went 4-5 with an ERA of 5.74 in 2025, so again, not brilliant. But we've seen glimpses of a real player in there, and if we're cutting salary and rebuilding young arms with a rotation in 26 likely to be led by the likes of Brandon Pfaadt and Ryan Nelson, then going all in to revive a couple of arms who've shown some promise but likely just need a change of scenery could be the way forward. The Rangers have a strong 1-2 punch between DeGrom and Eovaldi, so could probably be tempted to part with the duo of Leiter and Rocker without much hassle, especially if the Diamondbacks are to replenish their prospect rankings further with a Mark Church type arm who could be a solution for the pen in 2026 without an issue. On a personal note as well, it would be amazing to see two pitchers eligible to represent Great Britain at the World Baseball Classic rocking up in the desert, and you best believe I would be forking out $200 a piece for those jerseys. Another team who've been vocal about adding to their payroll last year is over in Georgia, with the Atlanta Braves ownership touting at least another $50 million in payroll spending incoming. It'll be interesting to see where that is spent for a team that until recently were paralysed without Ronald Acuna Jr. leading the way. Neither of their DH candidates had a stellar year, although Drake Baldwin wasn't exactly unimpressive either, while second base was split between 5 players, with Ozzie Albies making the majority of the starts, and he hit for an average of 240 with 16 home runs, so not terrible. But if you offered them Ketel Marte type numbers instead, you'd probably get your hand shaken right out of the socket. The real question is, who would you get in return? So we briefly discussed Chris Sale as an option for the Diamondbacks as a target approaching the trade deadline earlier this year, and he statistically was Atlanta's best starter as he fought off Father Time in 2025 to reach a 4.4 WAR, and resultantly Atlanta exercised their option for 2026, guaranteeing Chris Sale something in the region of $18 million. However, I don't think that a veteran pitcher who's as likely to refuse to play if he doesn't like the uniform as he is to pitch a gem is the best fit for the Diamondbacks, who, let's not forget, were known as the Diamondbacks retirement home for a very long time, and we've done a pretty good job of getting rid of that for now. But let's also not forget, we will still be paying Madison Bumgarner money next year, and that's pretty crazy, so I don't think a super veteran is the way to go there. Instead, if we are in a particularly risk-taking mood, I think going after a package of Spencer Strider and Hurston Waldrep is probably the best thing to be chasing out of ATL. Strider, on his return from injury, didn't set the league alight with a 4.45 ERA, but still posted a positive WAR. He's been called out for giving up hard contact more than a Major League ace candidate should, but through August and into September was showing signs of the Cy Young candidate we all say he might be from 2023 before his injury. Now, I would have faith and hope that a proper spring training to get him season ready is the ticket, and hope that the D-backs pitching curse stays away. Hurston Waldrep as the sweetener there would give the D-backs another Major League proven arm who can operate either as a starter or as an effective reliever in a pinch, and he also comes with plenty of team control, but also crucially potential to grow as well. Now, I don't want to kickstart a trend of D-backs going after pitchers with bad injury records, but I'll throw this name in the mix anyway. Kodai Senga sits as a wasted asset. Now, we all know the Mets were humiliated in 2025, they spent big, and they didn't even make the playoffs. So you can absolutely guarantee that heads will be rolling, and their fan base are going to demand big changes. Now, no disrespect to Jeff McNeil, but Ketel absolutely would be an upgrade at second, and would tick a lot of the boxes they need ticked over in Queens. Senga, on the other hand, might not exactly be the arm to set the D-backs rotation alight if you listen to Mets fans' opinions on last year, but he would bring in that sweet Japanese monetary interest that effectively runs the 3 square mile area around Dodger Stadium now, whilst still very much being considered a front end of the rotation kind of guy. His 2025 season still had him post a positive WAR and wins record, and the 3.02 ERA is certainly no joke either. He was a smidge the strongest Mets starter, and I think he's got plenty of juice left in him. And a 1-2 punch of a recuperated Corbin Burns and Kodai Senga back to his best is a thought to properly salivate over. One more option before we go is very left field shout, but when you search for Ketel Marte trade on Reddit, where I tend to lurk often for baseball related banter, the first result is from the Blue Jays subreddit. We already know that the World Series defeat means Toronto are doubly depressed, and they're likely to lose Bo Bichette in his free agency unless they can stump up about $200 million that he's projecting from the Mets. But that mess means that there's a hole that needs plugging at their center infield. If Jimenez potentially moves across to short, Ketel could be an option there too. If they were to want an offer, it'd be easy to say, okay, well, we want Kevin Gosman plus one of Hoffman or Varland or Fluharty. And yes, I know how impressive Trey Yesavage was in the World Series too, but A, he'll be a rookie in 2026, and I don't think pinning our hopes on him would be the answer. And B, he's kind of unproven in that sense. Well, at the same time, is going to probably be massively overvalued in any kind of trade conversation, even if it was a case of, hey, Ketel Marte's on the market, they'd say, oh, who do you want? We say Trey Yesavage. We're probably going to hang up the phone at that point. So, yeah, probably not going to happen. I would argue that a package containing Shane Bieber would help in the immediate short term. Plus, and here's the key thing here, Ricky Tiedemann, who could use an extended spring to work up on his arm back from Tommy John. Sports Illustrated recently has been keen to label him the next Yesavage. Arriving early into next year, he's got the kind of profile to form a part of any well-rounded starting rotation. Currently, he's ranked as Toronto's number 4 prospect, and the left-hander has ridiculous strikeout stuff. He started his time in the Blue Jays organization, ringing up 199 batters across 122 and 2/3 innings pitched in his first 2 professional seasons down on the farm, and is projected to begin 2026 in Triple-A Buffalo. And despite Reno being not exactly pitcher-friendly, as one of my personal favourites, Yu-Min Lin, found in 2025, it would be worth developing relationships with our multitude of catchers, because, in case you haven't seen, we've signed Aramis Garcia to be one of Gabby's backups next year, so expect a lot of up and down from Triple-A behind the plate. So, building those batteries to get the year off and running, to then be able to call up such a strong pitching prospect, would be a game changer should yet more arms explode in a continuation of the D-backs run of horrible luck. We absolutely cannot afford to rely on free agent guns-for-hire starters in the later months of the season. So if it takes Trading Ketel to guarantee stronger arms all year round, then we should at least be picking up the phone. Now yes, we have perhaps gone a little overboard here, and it's still apparently unlikely the D-backs will trade Ketel unless they get an offer that 100% makes perfect sense. And it's hard to imagine what an offer like that looks like given how popular Ketel is amongst this fan base. I've not missed the calls to build the statue this, retire the number that, but to play devil's advocate, there supposedly was a time where trading Paul Goldschmidt was the right move for this franchise, even if the fans hated it. But by cold numbers alone, the D-backs traded away 3 WAR of Goldie for a return of over 7 WAR between Carson Kelly, Luke Weaver and Andy Young with a balanced pick tacked on. And that ultimately means the deal also includes Emmanuel Rivera and Christian Mena in a deal further down the line. Now, I know we all love Goldie, and I'll be happy to see him back in purple and teal if we are in the market for a return this year, but if we're bringing in potentially 3 or 4 strong guys, or 1 and 2 elite arms in exchange for Ketel, don't shoot the messenger, but I think we should be giving it some very serious thought, and that's where we're going to wrap up the episode. Once again, I want to say thank you very much for tuning into this slightly out of schedule emergency T-Backs podcast, but hey, it's a big issue. We're going to talk about it, and that's what we're always going to do on this show. We're going to bring you things as they happen, as soon as I hear about them over here in the UK. I want to say thank you very much for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell button, blah, 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 all that crap, wherever it is that you're listening / watching to the show. Thank you very much. Please make sure to go follow us over on socials, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.